Mental Health Matters is sponsored by Seek Sense, with you a step closer towards a positive change.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. My name is Harpal Singh and welcome to Mental Health Matters, a show where we openly talk about mental health. Guys, you've got to say something to you. It's our final show. 10 weeks, 10 topics, 10 experts. It's come, it's gone. It's our final show. We've got some wonderful guests lined up. My name is Harpal Singh. ਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਜੀ ਆਇਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਮੈਂਟਲ ਹੈਲਥ ਮੈਟਰਸ ਉੱਤੇ ਸਾਡੇ 10 ਸ਼ੋਅ ਦਾ ਅੱਜ ਆਖਰੀ ਹਿੱਸਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਆਖਰੀ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਹੈਗਾ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਦੋ ਹੋਣਹਾਰ ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲਿਸਟ ਹੈਗੇ ਜੋ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਟਰਾਮਾ ਬਾਰੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰੇਗੇ Today we've got two specialists in the field of trauma. We've got a qualified accredited specialist counsellor and psychotherapist, worked in post-traumatic stress and trauma, working at various London organisations and learning to be a clinical supervisor. I've got the wonderful Amrit Sagoo here.
Hi.
Amrit, how are you doing?
I'm well, how are you?
Not too bad. Thank you for coming on to our show.
Thank you for having me.
Alongside we've got another fantastic specialist, done a master's degree in integrative child psychotherapy, trained in arts and education, working with a number of adolescents over the years and worked through traumatic experiences. We've got the wonderful and the Kiara Hunjan.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi. Thank you for coming to our show.
You're very welcome.
So guys, today what we're going to talk about is trauma and traumatic experience that have gone on for a number of years. So let's start with Amrit. Tell me a bit more about yourself.
Sure. I grew up in Malaysia. I moved to the UK in '98. I've been here since. I did my studies here. I did my philosophy at Birkbeck initially. And then finishing that, I thought I'd do more. And then I started to train in existential psychotherapy. And I did that in Middlesex University and graduated in 2010. And since then, I've been practicing. Initially, it was a bunch of placements from mental health centres to prisons. And I'm now at the NHS. I work for a London sexual assault referral centre. Okay. And I'm doing a supervision course as well to become a clinical supervisor at some point.
Okay. So,
yeah.
Kiara, same thing about you. How has it been for you?
Sorry, what was that?
Tell me a bit about myself.
So I was born here. I originally did an arts degree, so I did textile design. And then about 8 years ago, I started my journey in psychotherapy, really, and decided to really specialise in working with children specifically.
Why children?
Why children in particular? I think with my own life experience, I have 2 kids of my own, and life is such that we go through traumatic experiences. Nobody is immune from them at all. Everybody is going to have some kind of form of trauma in their lives, and so part of my journey was about being able to be there for my children and to help them through certain life experiences. So that's why it was relevant for me to work with children at the time.
And with you, Amrit, you've focused on the adolescents and the adult side of
Yes,
things.
definitely. I specialise working with adults mostly, and I work within the sexual violence sector at the moment. So mostly women who have been raped, but also men occasionally. That's the field that I'm
Men being
drawn to.
raped?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you mind
It's uncommon.
for our viewers to explain how men can get raped?
Men can get raped, obviously they can. Rape is rape. It's gender free. It can happen to any sex. Men can be raped by men. Men can be raped by women. So yes, and I think there are huge stigmas around men seeking support following sexual assault or rape, because I think predominantly because they are also raped by men. So in a way, it puts them in that minority sector where I'm a male, but I've also been raped by a male, and what does this mean for me? My sexuality, who I am, and the various other connotations that may come with that.
Seems it's a very powerful thing to say there, where people coming to you talking about being raped from a male being male.
Absolutely.
From my experience of having quite a lot of people on my show, men don't talk about their problems. Is that something you come across as well?
I do, and sometimes what brings them to seek counselling is when there has been a crisis of some sort in their lives, and it's at that point that particular crisis will trigger the unresolved crisis, which is the assault or the rape. And that point is what brings a man to seek help, because everything seems to be falling away.
Kiara, we started the show by talking about trauma. What is trauma?
So trauma it happens to us, and it can be a deeply disturbing event when any experience can stun us, like a jolt out the blue, and it will leave us feeling totally powerless and out of control, with feelings of utter helplessness and hopelessness. So such things like, we've already mentioned sexual violence, rape, sexual abuse, domestic violence, things like just general things in terms of terrorism. That can also be a traumatic experience. Car accidents, when children actually have to have an operation, that can also be very traumatic for them as well. So trauma covers many different things.
Sure, and also want to add combat and war. That's huge, because I work with some post-war veterans who suffer tremendously from post-traumatic stress. Can I just say a bit more about trauma? I think I'd like to give acknowledgement to where it comes from. The word is actually from the 17th century Greek word. We borrow it from the Greeks. And what it means is actually to wound. And I think it's just important to have that in your mind. It's a bit, it brings to light what it does to one's psyche. It wounds internally. It's not obvious on your body. It's an internal wound that sometimes can bleed quite profusely for a long time, and hurt maybe even more so because it's not seen. And some clients have told me it's a bit like having a splinter in your skin that you can't quite remove. That it's stuck. And hence trauma is about feeling quite stuck and paralyzed as well.
And just to add to that, I mean, with children, we would recognise if they had like a broken, leg or a broken arm or something like that. What's so different from a psychological wound like that that's kind of what we're talking about there. It's just because if we can't see it, doesn't mean it's not there as well.
Absolutely. And because of that, I think, again, it raises the stigma of talking about something that may not be apparent, but does cripple one nevertheless in your everyday, trauma, following and after, the aftermath of trauma, it fragments everything, basically.
It's interesting talking about trauma and talking quite a lot about domestic violence, terror, accidents, operations, war, to wound as well. I just see trauma trauma जो पंजाबी च कहते हैं तो एक हादसा है एक किस्म का जो एक बंदे नो बेमुताज कर दिंदा है या डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस होए या कोई डर होए या कोई एक्सीडेंट होए या ऑपरेशन का कुछ होए तो वो ही जो ऐसी एग्जांपल देता है एक जो एक कंडा विच फस जाए थोड़े शरीर विच उन्हें कड्ढन थोड़ा टाइम लग जाता है तो वो भी जख्म जो है भरदा नहीं होंदा है. Children and adults, they all suffer from trauma. I'm going to start with Kiara. What's the difference between children suffering from trauma and adults suffering from trauma?
Well, there is a myth that that babies and toddlers, they're too young to remember any of what goes on for them at all, and they won't be affected by traumatic circumstances. But that's actually not the case, because their brain development is so it's not advanced as much as, obviously, or developed as much as adults' brains are, and so they're much more at risk of stress and trauma as a result.
Let me get this straight. Children can suffer from stress and trauma as well.
Yes.
As well as adults can.
Yes.
एक गल नोट कर लो भाई तुसी कि बच्चे जो भी हैगे ना उन्होंने भी स्ट्रेस ते ट्रॉमा हो सकती है कि सारे दोनों स्पेशलिस्ट ते बैठ के दोनों सहमत है कि बच्चे जो हैगे ना वो भी हो सकता है. Which please continue on that understanding of kids and trauma.
So if a baby, for instance, is in a cot and there is the parents are having a fight, it's abusive, there's shouting, yelling, etc., etc., that baby can't do anything, because we are programmed to, in a kind of fearful situation, what we usually do is we either fight, we flee, or we freeze. And with babies, because they can't move, all of that energy that it comes out of the abuse and the fighting and all of that actually gets manifested in their body. And so that is then stored in their body until much later. And as a consequence of that, there are many, misdiagnoses later on to say that some children could develop depression or other mental illnesses.
So let me get that right. So children can actually go through traumatic abuse as a child.
Yeah.
Witness it.
Yes.
And it remains unprocessed.
Yeah. That's
But
right.
as they get older, it may manifest itself in certain illnesses and certain areas in their life.
Yes.
It's interesting to सुने जाए तो देखे जाए जो बच्चे होंदे हैं ते उन्हें कोई हादसा देखे या कुछ देखे ज़रूरी नहीं कि उस टाइम उन्हें अफेक्ट होए देर बाद कई साल बाद अफेक्ट हो सकता है mental health में. Coming back to adults in trauma,
Sure.
we know that Kiara kindly mentioned flight or fight or freeze.
Yes.
How is it different from an adult to it?
It's not different at all. I would like to actually throw in the fourth, which is appease. We have that as well, which is being a friend. Being a friend to your perpetrator while you are being attacked. Not a friend in the friend sense, but in the sense of appeasing the person who's abusing you. And that might actually also apply for children. They appease the one who's hurting them so that they will not get more hurt. I would appease you if, just do what you have to do, get on with it, just don't kill me. So that's very common in terms of women especially getting raped. Most women who come to see me talk a lot about being in that frozen state where they are not able to move, and then blame themselves afterwards, saying, why did I not run? Why did I not scream? Why did I not fight him? Why did I not do something? And then carry so much of that blame for such a long time before they are then be able to see that actually that's a completely normal response when under threat. You do not fight back, because if you do, it's your brain's way of telling you to stay safe. If you do fight, you may get killed. It's a bit like, I think we share that with animals, that primitive aspect of us in the brain that kicks in a bit like the mouse plays dead when the cat comes. Pretends to be dead, so hopefully the cat will go away. Cat might prod it, but eventually says, I think the mouse is dead, I'm going to leave it alone. So we do that as human beings too. And I think that's a good thing. To fight back, although that may sound heroic, may actually be the worst thing ever for anyone to do in that moment of where there is obvious threat.
So you just mentioned domestic violence here, fight, flies and appease as well.
Yeah.
Do you find that in the culture of the Indian or Punjabi culture, is that quite regular as you find it, or is it something that's all round every culture?
I think it exists across all cultures. It's got no cultural identity. It's a human primitive identity that we all share. That we all would find ourselves in one of those aspects, whether we fight or we flee or we freeze or we appease. And I would again say most of it, I would say 90% is in the freeze aspect of the body. Very few would actually fight.
काफ़ी उन सारे जो दोनों एक्सपर्ट है कह चुके हैं कि भी जो खासकर जो डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस होता है ऐसी या औरतें जो होंदी है जो डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस विच होंदे वो ट्रॉमेटिक और हादसा एक किस्म दा हादसा चल जांदे है तो चाहते वो फिर या लड़दे गए या रुक जाते हैं जो बंदे लड़ जाते हैं वो फिर अगे वधने की कोशिश होंदे है फिर वेले वेले बंदे वो करते हैं तो जो बाकी जो है ना वो सहम जाते हैं और वो जो हादसे दे उत्ते हादसे चल जाते हैं तो जो डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस है वो अगे वधी जाता है तो what happens, how do you get away from these traumatic experiences? Is there any possible symptoms or behaviours that could indicate a child has experienced domestic violence or traumatic experiences?
Well, they're going to be very varied, really. But I think things like the child may numb themselves down completely, so they'll go into that frozen state. But also their body will constrict and become very stiff. But as parents, we would intuitively know that there was perhaps something wrong with our child because they're displaying behaviours like not being able to sleep, for instance, having nightmares, increased anxiety and nervousness, even when they're separating from their parents or their mum, they don't want to do something like that. They could get scared very easily with a door slamming, for instance, or raised voices or anything like that. So it's very, very varied and very specific to the child.
ਕਾਰਜ ਹੁਣੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਦੱਸੇਗਾ ਕਿ ਵੀ ਬੱਚੇ ਜੋ ਕੋਈ ਹਾਦਸਾ ਹੋਏ ਭਾਵੇਂ ਸਕੂਲ 'ਚ ਹੋਵੇ ਭਾਵੇਂ ਘਰ 'ਚ ਹੋਏ ਜਾਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਘਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਏ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਕਾਫੀ ਕਈ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਜੋ ਨੁਕਸਾਨ ਪਹੁੰਚਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਅਤੇ ਕਦੀ ਕਦੀ ਡਰ ਵੀ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਡਰ ਵੀ ਹੈਗਾ ਉਹਦੀ ਨੀਂਦ ਵੀ ਅਫੈਕਟਡ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੀ ਹੈ ਕਦੀ ਕਦੀ ਦਰਵਾਜ਼ਾ ਜੋ ਭੇਜਿਆ ਜਾਏ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਵੀ ਬੰਦੇ ਸਹਿਮਤ ਹੋ ਡਰ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਕਿ ਸਹਿਮ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਕਿਸਮ ਦੇ Is it the same with adults?
In what way?
The symptoms?
Yeah, I suppose it does. It sounds very similar. The frozenness, the numbness that follows a rape, for instance. What's interesting as well is sometimes if those clients have also been sexually abused or had some form of abuse as a child, that can also be triggered, if they were then abused as an adult. And sometimes it's so hard to know which part of them is grieving what aspect of their life, because all of it's being triggered at the same time. So it's really important as a therapist to work with the here and now, with what's going on for them today in this room with me, and then slowly piece the pieces of the past together, bits by bit, and making sense of it before they can then move on in some way.
Some valuable information being shared here by both of our experts. Just to let you know, our telephone lines are open. So if you do wish to call in and speak to either Kiara or Amrit, telephone lines are open. Please look at the numbers on the bottom of your screen and please dial in and you'll get straight through. So ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਦੱਸਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਕਿ ਦੋਨੇ ਸਾਡੇ experts ਜੋ ਹੈਗੇ Kiara ਤੇ Amrit ਦੋਨੋਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਤੇ ਬੈਠੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਜੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਾਲ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੋ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੋ ਤੇ ਸਾਡਾ ਟੈਲੀਫੋਨ ਨੰਬਰ ਨੀਚੇ ਹੈਗਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ तुरंत फोन करो तो साना तुसी गलबात कर सकते हैं जो ही कोई हादसा होते कोई काम दा होए पार दा होए या कोई घरेलू मामले में तुसी कोई गल करना चाहो सारे एक्सपर्ट्स बैठे ना तो सानू तो नाल गिरफ्तार कर सकते हैं When we talk about traumas and understanding of traumatic experiences, we mentioned that it can take time before it get processed. Why is it so hard to talk about certain traumatic experiences, including rape or something's happened to you as a child?
Sure.
Let's start with you.
Yeah, of course. I think there's, with rape, it's such a loaded word. Women struggle to even say that they've been raped in the room with me. I think what holds a lot of people back ultimately is the fear of not being believed. I have so many women coming to me and saying, I kept this quiet for so long because I was afraid someone might turn around and say, are you sure? Are you sure that, you weren't quite responsible as well? Planting that seed of doubt in their head. And then there's fear. There's the stigma of actually saying I've been raped and what that would mean for themselves, for the community, for their families. Many keep it a secret for years. Ultimately, I think it's the shame. Chronic shame as well. Again, if there's been abuse as a child, that might be seeping through if the adult is then raped. There are myths in society as well that I work really, really hard to challenge. Women and consent, and it's a huge thing. There's so much about, if a woman is taking drugs or she's had too much to drink, then she shouldn't complain if she's been raped.
Why is that in this 21st century environment?
People still think that way. People still blame the woman, saying that, she shouldn't have been drunk then. She should have been more careful. But in law, consent is about making a choice. And choice can only be made if you have the freedom and capacity to make a choice. If you're under drugs or if you had too much to drink, you do not have freedom and capacity to make a clear choice. And someone who takes advantage of that vulnerable person is using their power. So no, I have to consent to sex. If I'm not consenting with freedom and with capacity of mind, then that's rape. You know, there's so many more other myths out there about what women wear, about, you know, whether they should have taken a taxi or the night bus, all sorts of things. We're not here, I tell clients, we're not here, for women clients especially, we're not here to help men, not rape us. We're not born to be that. We're meant, you know, to feel safe in this world that we live in.
Kiara, I'm just going to ask you to elaborate on those thoughts that Amrit kindly mentioned here. What's your thoughts on what Amrit just said?
I think just in terms of being a child and not having the power really, especially if in cases such as sexual abuse where perpetrators are often people that we know rather than a complete stranger, and so more often than not it's about children being kept safe, and sometimes the sexual perpetrators or the people that hurt these children are supposed to be their caregivers. They're supposed to be their parents, or you know, their uncles, their aunties, because actually sexual abuse does happen with female perpetrators too, and so it violates so many things about a child, and causes a lot of harm and damage.
I'm so glad you talked about that, because 90% of rape or any sexual assault is by someone you know.
90%?
90%. It's only 10%. That's another myth about it's being, you know, walking in the park in the night and some stranger jumps out from the bush and rapes you. Very rarely does that happen. Tends to be by your work colleague, your partner, husband, wife maybe as well, friend, former lover.
It's really, really tough subject we're talking about today. 90% of the people who get raped know they're perpetrators. So 90% जो बंदे जो the हादसे विच गुजरते हैं वो बंदे जानते की है, खासकर जो बच्चे हैं या मामे दे या ताए या चाचे या फुफड़ कोई हो सकता है जो उन्होंने abuse कर सकता है. Why is talking about child abuse in our community so hard to talk about?
Again, I just think it goes back to what Amrit was saying. It was about, you know, you don't really believe that it's going to happen in your family, or that somebody would be capable of doing something like this at all. And again, it's shame. It's shame about talking about sexual abuse or any of those kinds of subjects, that somebody would want to actually, or would be capable of doing something like that.
I could feel the tension in the room here for a moment. You were talking about it as specialists. It can be quite hard, and I can only imagine people at home when they have to go see a specialist or an expert and talk about the traumatic experiences, how difficult it can be. किसी होना ऐसे बैठेगा ऐसे अदूते टॉपिक पर विचार करेगा तो खुद ही विचार काफ़ी मुश्किल है कि सर्दी ना मुझे बैठ के गल करने से तो जो बंदे जाके स्पेशलिस्ट देखते हैं उन्होंने से काफ़ी मुश्किल हो गया गल करना गल सुनना गल दोबारा विचार के देखना की हो रहा है कितना हो रहा है. What advice would you give to someone who's at the cusp of talking to someone and needs to talk to someone professionally, but is quite scared of being labelled, quite scared about being judged, by being scared about being saying it's your fault? What suggestions and advice would you give?
I'd say come see a therapist. Don't wait. You've lived with it for so long. Seek a therapist you can trust. Seek a therapist you can connect with. That space is safe. It's contained. It's for you. It's confidential too, with limits, obviously. You know, if it's a police case, then that's a different story. But in terms of seeking support, don't suffer too long. You know, you know, it's hard to be vulnerable with someone you don't know. But because it's someone you don't know, a stranger, a therapist, it can actually make that process a lot easier. So I would say to anyone out there who may be keeping this hidden and buried for so long for whatever reasons, you know, for shame or whatever, stop waiting, you know, get someone to help you. Because your therapist is not only going to bear witness to what you've gone through, which is such an important thing to do, she's going to listen to you, she's not going to judge you, and she can also help you through some of the psychological aspects that you may be going through, some of the PTSD symptoms, and help you manage and cope better with life. you may not be able to manage as well without some of that support. Just getting some skills and knowledge of just how to get sleep, how to manage some of the flashbacks and the triggers and the nightmares.
Kiara, just touching with you, have you had these cases where parents have come to you and talk about their children going through traumatic experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, you know, as a parent, it is always about trying to keep your child safe as possible. And there would be guilt with some parents about that as well. And it's being able to talk to the parent in a non-judgmental way. We're not here to criticize or to judge anybody that has been through a traumatic experience. So just really opening that up to know that it will be a very safe, confidential space.
Absolutely.
कभी-कभी ये चीज़ जो उसे गल करते हैं क्या जो स्पेशलिस्ट खास स्पेशलिस्ट हुए उन्होंने देखना होता है कि जो स्पेशलिस्ट है पहले उन्होंने ट्रेंड है क्या उन्होंने पता है कि कहना कौन कहना है दूसरी गल ये भी हैगी कि वो जगह जो हैगी ना वो एक जगह जो हैगी जो तुसी अपने विचार खुल के कर सकते हो ऐ नहीं सोचो कि भाई वो की सोचेगा या की होएगा की कहेगा क्योंकि खासकर जो रिलेशनशिप है वो काफ़ी मजबूत है काफ़ी सेफ जगह है The aftermath of such experiences, what imprints are left on the human?
That's a good question. Huge imprints from what's happened. For me, I think mostly what I hear is the fragmentation of life they once knew that no longer is, if that makes sense. I'll try and break it down a bit. It's trauma happens, something bad happens which leads to trauma. And you're never quite the same afterwards. The things that you used to believe in, your sense of self, the trust in the world you live in. You may have thought the world was a fairly safe place, now no longer. Relationships break down sometimes. I have quite a few clients who talk to me about, losing some friends as well, that they don't always work out and partners. So the aftermath is huge. Some also cannot just sustain their day-to-day of going out to work or feeling safe in the world. So everything is disrupted. So the aftermath of trauma isn't something to be sniffed at, to put it lightly. It's really painful, and it takes quite a long time to kind of look at the rupture.
And I also think it takes huge courage for somebody to be able to face up and speak about their trauma and to find or to try and to find a place of safety and to trust somebody enough to go into their hurt and their pain.
Exactly.
It takes an awful amount of courage.
There's something about being listened to, I think, that can help with the healing. They call it bearing witness. Having someone witness my pain can help me heal.
Someone bearing my pain, witnessing my pain can help me heal.
Yeah, but I must have a witness for that, if that makes sense.
In Punjabi, if you say this, कोई बंदा मन सुन ले जो मेरे हो रहे हैं तो जो दर्द है ना वो एक दूसरे नाल बांट सकता है I've had someone message in saying that she had experienced a car accident.
Okay.
Quite a bad car accident, and it happened about 10 years ago, and she's not been able to drive again. कोई सिगा जो जिन्हें एक्सीडेंट हुआ सिगा 10 साल पहले तो उन्होंने गड्डी चला नहीं सकती. What advice would you give to someone going through that kind of traumatic experience who's had an accident or some sort of incident that's happened and can't go back to it again?
For me, I think I would see if she's had some help, some support, if she's received some therapy. CBT might be quite useful in terms of addressing some of the, the phobias and getting behind the wheel again, to start driving again. But also looking at what it means on a deeper level to not feel able to feel safe in a car, what that might be bringing up for her. But I think I would strongly recommend, going to see someone and speaking about it, so that she can, start driving.
उन्होंने सर गल की थी कि एक बंदा जो एक्सीडेंट हुआ 10 साल पहला उन्होंने कहा कि तुसी जो कुछ है एक बंदे ने जाके या स्पेशलिस्ट जाके या एक्सपर्ट जाके तुसी गलबात करो और देखो की हो रही किद्दां होया सीगा तो उस बाद जाके देखो की कैसे दे गए हौली हौली छोटे जो कदम है गया वो ला के फिर आगे जाके तुसी बच सकते हैं. What kind of going back to children traumatic, what kind of work do you actually do? Because talking to adults is you can talk things through. How is it with children? What do you do? I know you've got a background in art therapy, which is background in art.
Yeah. Which has proven pretty useful actually, because my room is kitted out with lots of art materials. We do painting, we play, so children are able to really, that's their language. Play is the language of children, so that's what they do. They play, they paint, they go into drama, so we could act things out together. They play with little figures that children regularly play with at home. They will tell me a story through that. We do storytelling, we write poems, so all manner of creative things, and that's what makes it safe for children to let me know about their experience.
Did you कारण जैसे कि जी आर्ट थेरेपी हो जाती है ड्रामा भी कर लेंगे प्ले भी करते हैं वो बच्चा फिर अपनी जो मन की गल विच हैगी ना वो इस राह तो गल कर सकता है. What advice would you give to someone whose child's not doing the playfulness that a child should be doing? What symptoms and signs can a parent be looking for?
Well, that's interesting you say that, because naturally children should be playing or would be playing, and that's a sign of health really. So if they're not doing that, then it would be wise to kind of just look into that a little bit more and to maybe seek some help from somewhere. Schools are a great place to start, as is the GP surgery too.
So you've got the play and playfulness. So if a child is not doing that, a parent what should they do?
They could probably just go into school if they're of school age and just raise their concerns about that, but also just to think about whether or not something has happened recently that, for instance, with a younger child, if they've even had a fall, that could be a traumatic experience for them, whereas for an older child or an adult, we wouldn't think anything of it really. But that could, something as minor as that could be seen as traumatic for a child.
How? Sounds a bit
if the child was
child's fallen over and it happens every day.
Well, true. We all need soothing. Children in particular need comfort and soothing, and to be made better, to be made to feel better.
Absolutely.
And so if that has not happened, then that's going to impact them in some way.
What about the parent-child relationship? How should that have been? It might be open to both of you in terms of working with, especially on a traumatic or non-traumatic basis.
Sure.
The relationship between a child and a parent. How would that be? Where is the balance in that? How would you work with a child if you suspect there's something going on? You've gone to the school, it's not worked out, but the relationship itself, caring, loving, what kind of relationship should it be?
In terms of,
just general playfulness, and spending time with the kids.
Yeah, and I think being open to allowing the child to not stifle any of their kind of feelings or their emotions, and to be very open about how they are feeling, what thoughts they have, and just to be very open to that, let the child explore. So allowing for playfulness, but also concern, and so that the child is able to, if they are experiencing something difficult, to know that mum and dad, extended family are safe enough to come back to, and they can talk to them about certain things that are worrying them or that they're afraid of.
Guys, just to let you know, the telephone lines are open, numbers on the bottom of your screen here. If you do wish to speak to both of our specialists, they're on hand to take your calls and go for that. ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਦੱਸਣਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਸਾਡੀ ਜੋ ਟੈਲੀਫੋਨ ਲਾਈਨਸ ਖੁੱਲ ਚੁੱਕੇ ਹੈਗੇ, ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਦੋਨੋਂ ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲਿਸਟ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ, ਨੰਬਰ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਜੋ ਹੈਗਾ ਟੈਲੀਫੋਨ ਨੰਬਰ ਜੋ ਹੈਗਾ ਉਹ ਨੀਚੇ ਸਕਰੀਨ ਤੇ ਹੈਗਾ, ਸਾਨੂੰ ਫਿੰਗਰ ਸਟੂਡੀਓ ਵਿੱਚ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ. Amrit, you talked about PTSD.
Yes, I did.
For those people who don't know what PTSD, what is
PTSD?
PTSD, that's the one.
Sure. It stands for post-traumatic stress disorder. It happens after a traumatic event that is, that remains. I mean, everyone not everyone that experiences a traumatic event will go on to develop PTSD. Some do, some don't. And usually it's you've got to have a waiting time. So for instance, if something happens to me today, I'm not going to diagnose myself or let anyone diagnose me with PTSD until, say, a few months have passed. We do usually, so we don't see clients straight away following an act of violence. We let them sit it out. I know it sounds quite cruel at times, but we don't diagnose them with PTSD until much later, if the symptoms still remain. And what I mean by the symptoms are, when I see a client for the first time, we do an assessment, and in the assessment we look through some of the, what they may be going through. Flashbacks, nightmares, hypervigilance. These are all some of the more common responses that may indicate PTSD is happening. Unable to sleep, feeling still very jumpy in themselves, always still feeling that threat is imminent in their environment. I saw a client years ago who was on the, one of the tubes in the 7/7 bombings.
Okay.
And until today, she says when she hears a loud bang, she smells smoke. She smells fire, basically, even though there isn't. So her brain is still very much, that memory of that traumatic event, still very much online. The frontal part of your brain, the frontal lobe, has not processed that memory for it to be safe enough to be filed away. So you're always going to be triggered. So these are some of the more, I think, basic responses. PTSD is complex. It's very much in the body. And in a way, it's the brain's way of keeping you safe in that sense.
Fantastic understanding of PTSD. We'll pick up in a second. We've got a call coming through. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Hello? Hello? Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. It seems like we've got some problems there. Post-traumatic stress disorder, sleeping, jumpy, going a long way from you, it can be quite a thing. Not everyone suffers from it.
Not everyone suffers. Not everyone goes on to develop it. So it's very much a wait and see.
It's होने सारे अमृत जी ने दसेगा कि जो post-traumatic stress disorder जो है PTSD है बंदे नो जो बंदा सुता होता है उसका effect हो जाएगा कि तो होने दसेगा कि जो lady उन्हें को रंदी सी कि 9/11 थे tube ਵਿੱਚ ਸੀਗੀ 7/7
The one in London, yeah.
Yeah, London ਵਿੱਚ ਜੋ ਹਾਦਸੇ ਹੋਏ ਸੀ terrorist attacks ਹੋਏ ਸੀਗੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਜੋ ਵੀ ਕੋਈ ਵੱਡਾ ਜਾਂ ਬੈਂਕ ਜੋ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਕੋਈ ਵੱਡੀ ਖੜਕਾ ਉਹ ਬੰਦਾ ਜੋ ਹੈਗਾ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਸਮੋਕ ਦੀ ਸਿਗਨਲ ਆ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਉਹ ਜੋ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਕਿ ਜੋ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਚੱਲ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਕਿ ਜੋ ਉੱਥੇ 7/11 ਨੂੰ ਹੋਇਆ 7 ਜੋ ਲੰਡਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਹਾਦਸੇ ਹੋਏ ਸੀਗੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਸੀਗੇ ਉਹਨੇ ਪੁੱਛਣਾ ਸੀ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ Punjabi which
catch me out, yeah.
What helps in the recovery process?
What helps? That's a good question. Processing, talking about it, talking about the memory. What we normally say, the more you talk about what's been unsafe, in that sense, a traumatic memory, the aim of that is to normalize it, if I can use that word. I'm trying to use words like that quite loosely. But to process that memory so it no longer remains unsafe. So ultimately the aim of that is to file it back in that cabinet in the back brain where you can, it's like, for example, if I ask you, assuming it's a safe memory, what you did 2 years ago on your birthday, you will be pulling out a file from your back brain and showing it to me because it's safe, no symptoms in the body.
So let's do that. Let's continue the Punjabi flank. 2 ਸਾਲ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਜਨਮ ਦਿਨ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛੇ ਕਿ 2 ਸਾਲ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਜਨਮ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੀ ਕੀਤਾ ਨਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਫਾਈਲ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਦਿਮਾਗ 'ਚ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਫਾਈਲ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਅੱਗੇ ਆ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਠੀਕ ਹੈ
Assuming it's a good memory.
ਜੋ ਅੱਛੀ ਮੈਮਰੀ ਹੋਵੇ ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਅੱਛਾ ਠੀਕ ਹੈ let's continue.
Yes, so you pull that out, you show me, you tell me this is what I did for my birthday, this is where we went, this is what I ate, it's safe, and then you put it back. You cannot do that with something traumatic.
ਫਿਰ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਜਾਏ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਹੁਣ ਸੇ ਅਮ੍ਰਿਤ ਨਾਲ ਜਾਂ ਕਾਰਨ ਨਾਲ ਬੈਠੇ ਹੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰੇਗੇ 2 ਸਾਲ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਕੀ ਹੋਇਆ ਸੀਗਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਸੀ ਫਲਾਣੇ ਰੈਸਟੋਰੈਂਟ ਗਏ ਸੀਗੇ ਸੀ ਆ ਕਰਦਾ ਸੀਗਾ ਜਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਦਾਇਰ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀਗਾ ਤੇ ਖੁਸ਼ੀ ਦਾ ਟਾਈਮ ਸੀਗਾ ਉਹ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜੋ ਫਾਲ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਖੋਲੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਦਿਮਾਗ ਦੀ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਉਹ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬੰਦ ਕਰਕੇ ਨਾ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਵਾਪਸ ਰੱਖ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਚੰਗਾ
ਠੀਕ ਹੈ
ਫਿਰ ਕੀ ਹੁੰਦਾ What happens next?
What happens next? After processing the memory, well, hopefully then they would not have they would not be as triggered anymore, not as crippled, I suppose, anymore by what's happened in the past.
So that's a positive memory.
Yeah.
What about a negative memory? What happens in the psyche?
That's the traumatic memory would be what we would call a negative memory. That's the memory we'll be working to try and process, to not feel that it's unsafe anymore. Very much also about putting it in the time where it belongs. Like if a client of mine was having a flashback, I always tell them, first thing you say to yourself is that you're safe. Second thing you do is you tell yourself that's in the past. Sometimes just reminding yourself of what date it is can help. We call them grounding techniques, so we work with that, how to ground yourself in the moment.
So the first thing is that
you're safe.
ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪਹਿਲੀ ਚੀਜ਼ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਹੀ ਹੈਗੇ ਸੁਸ਼ੀਲ ਲੱਗੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੂਸਰੀ ਪਾਰਟ ਜਾਏਗਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਯਾਦ ਕਰੋ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਹੋ ਚੁੱਕਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਇਹ ਬੀਤਾ ਗੱਲ ਹੈਗਾ ਹੁਣ ਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ guys, we've got a call coming through, so ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ.
Hello? Hello?
Okay, I don't think it's coming through to our station here. Okay, cool. Change. What are the difficulties in the recovery process? People want to change, people want to get better, people want to work through these experiences. What stops them from doing that?
Lack of support.
From where?
They may not have someone they can talk to. If they're not seeing a therapist, they may remain quite stuck. Lack of support in the community, lack of support in families. Sometimes you don't believe that you should be sharing personal stuff outside of the four walls. Lack of trust that you will be heard and believed. Lots of fear, coming back to what I said earlier about being disbelieved and the shame. All of that can stop one actually recovering, because if you don't talk about something that is hurting you, how are you going to heal?
Kiara, talk about this recovery process. Amrit Khan's mentioned family, friends, networks and community. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think similarly for children, if they've had a traumatic experience and they're in therapy, then the biggest thing to do is actually to ensure, again, a place of safety, that the child feels safe, and that's paramount to the road of recovery, really, and healing within that.
I think even as adults we need to feel safe and contained to be able to trust someone, to talk to someone.
And as the Punjabi community, are we doing enough to feel safe, be in a position where we can actually go and actually talk? Do we have that security? Do we have that understanding? Do we have that knowledge in our community?
I'm not sure. I'd like to think we can.
Perhaps we don't have it at the moment, but raising awareness about this is extremely important.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
there is no shame in going out and talking to a qualified professional about incidents that are very difficult to speak about at home and to manage.
Let me ask a controversial question to both of you guys.
Knew that was coming.
How many of your clients are Asian or Punjabi?
Punjabi?
Yeah.
I'd say less than 3.
Less than 3?
None.
Why? Why is it where... Sorry, you're based in West London, aren't you?
Yeah.
West London has got a dense population... Northwest London has got a dense population of the Asian Punjabi community. Why is it none of your clients come from the Punjabi background?
Yeah, why?
Well, I specifically work in a Catholic school, so that would be a reason why.
But generally speaking, why is it that this is open to both of you, why is it the Asian community, especially the Punjabi community, are quite reluctant to talk about their thoughts, their feelings, especially traumatic experiences?
I think they've probably grown up, and kind of been conditioned to think that you don't talk to someone about your feelings, and certainly not to a professional, not to a therapist, and pay them money. You keep it within the family, and sometimes keeping in the family is actually the problem, because the family is not going to understand, or they may feel more judged. So then what happens is those words go unsaid. It doesn't get spoken of until maybe much later on in life, when something may trigger that.
But I think in the past we had a different kind of system within our families where there were elders that we could also go to and turn to, and some of that is now breaking down, and there isn't that trust, there isn't that wisdom that some people may have.
So you're talking about the generation gaps occurring.
Yeah.
You talk about the elders. I know if you go back to Punjab, and there used to be panchayat, and people used to be able to talk to the elders. Now, even now, some people might go to a gurdwara and speak to someone from there and work through what they need to work through. But as we become more involved in life and we're less integrated, and we're more, is that the case now, continuing going forward, or is it some communities still have that?
I think specifically, I mean, not just in terms of community, but perhaps this is, pretty relevant here, but when we talk about trauma also being intergenerational as well. So a lot of the parents that I see, or probably don't see, won't bring their child forward because they may have experienced sexual abuse or domestic violence themselves.
Absolutely.
And that has been passed through the generations. And so, that is also something that would hinder somebody from coming forward and seeking help.
Traumatic experiences are quite difficult for everyone.
Of course.
One person's one trauma, and it can be life-changing.
Yeah.
You deal with traumas on a day-to-day basis.
Mostly, yeah.
What keeps you going through this kind of work, especially focusing on trauma and talking to people with traumatic experience? Tell me, Amrit,
What keeps me going?
What keeps you going?
Well, for me, definitely, I want to be there as their witness. I believe in the work. I wouldn't be doing this. This is a tough group and clientele to choose as well, to specialize in. And it's also, I think, wanting to make a difference, not just for clients, but also, I don't think as a therapist you're ever completely detached from your client. It's your own journey that's also part of the mix. So it's wanting to offer that space, perhaps, that that may potentially help someone move on in their lives, because I value that space, because I believe that therapeutic space can actually make a whole new difference to someone who may need that help. But what sustains me is, I suppose, the hope, but also having a sensible head when I remember to have one, and self-care, and not to overdo, because I can only help others if I'm well enough to. So just being aware of my own boundaries and limitations.
And Kiara, similar question to you. What inspires you to work with children and continue working with children?
I think mainly the fact that we all have a propensity to want to heal. We do it at different degrees, and some want to, we go only as far as the client can go, as the child is able to go. We don't push that person's process. But I do believe that, we can heal from traumatic experiences as long as we have somebody there that's willing to connect with us, to hear our story, and to be a safe other, a safe person.
It's an interesting point you made there, that we can heal if we have the professionals talking to us and listening to us. I see बंदे ना गल कर से जो एक्सपर्ट्स है, स्पेशलिस्ट जो ना गल कर से ਅਸੀਂ खुद अपने आप ਨੂੰ ना बचा सकते हैं, अपने आप ਨੂੰ ਅੱਗੇ ਵਧਾ ਸਕਦੇ हैं। कई हिस्से होंगे, कई हादसे होंगे जो बंदे ਨੂੰ ਹਿਲਾ ਦਿੰਦਾ है। पर ऐ नहीं है कि दुनिया खत्म हो जाती है, दुनिया अगे ਵਧਦੀ है, बंदा भी अगे ਵਧਦਾ है। कई बंदे ਨੂੰ टाइम लगता है, कई बंदे ਨੂੰ ਸਮਾਂ लगता है, तो कई बंदे ਨੂੰ थोड़े ਜਿਹੇ जगह चाहिए होंगी है कि अपने जो मन जो है ਉਹਨੂੰ हल्का करने से कभी कभी जो वो हादसा हो चुका है उन्हें दोहराने वास्ते पहचान वास्ते की है आप पहचान वास्ते कि तुसी हुन सही जगह ते गए, महफूज जगह ते हो गया। आ भी तुसी देखना कि जो हो चुका है वो बीता हुआ कल है, होने वाला कल नहीं है। ऐसी काफ़ी डर जाता है कि की होना है, कि अगे जाके की होना है, कि की करना है। आ डर के कारण असी गल नहीं करते, आ डर के कारण असी अगे नहीं बचते, आ डर के कारण असी कुछ कर भी नहीं सकते। Amrit, coming towards the end of our show.
Yes, so fast.
What advice would you give to the viewers who've been watching our show, just to take away a few points for them?
Sure. That if you're struggling, don't struggle for too long, and you don't need to struggle on your own. There are people out there that you can seek help from. If you've been raped, sexually assaulted, it's never too late to get the help you need. There's some really, really good specialist centres in London, wonderful, from the rape crisis to the London Sexual Assault Referral Centre to the Havens. I would recommend that you give them a call and you speak to one of your trained professionals, so that you can not just, talk about the stuff that you've been through, but also move on in some ways from it, so it doesn't have a hold on your life, because ultimately you want to live and live well.
We've had some problems trying to get hold of our caller, and this caller is coming back in. Let's see, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Oh yes.
Thank Singh Ji, ਦੱਸੋ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਕਰੀ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ?
I just wanted to wonder, for children who may have abusive parents or someone who makes difference if they've done something wrong, what advice would you give to the child?
Okay, so abusive parents. What advice would you give to parents who have been quite abusive to children?
Well, it's a really difficult one, because them needing to actually seek help themselves, but actually knowing that perhaps they were, their parents were probably very abusive towards them, and knowing what that experience has been like and how that's impacted them as an individual.
So quite a lot of the terminology we were talking about here is जो माँ प्यो होंदे खुद भी एक किस्म दा एक्सपीरियंस ले चुके होंदे जो खुद on the effect towards the but what can they do for children? What can children do?
What can children do?
Yeah.
Aside from actually speaking to somebody else about it, and it would be a very difficult route going down in terms of then having to safeguard that child from exposure to that abuse that's occurred.
So quite a lot of it revolves around the understanding of what's safe for the child. It may be a case where other family friends, teachers can potentially get involved and help the child out from there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, coming nearly towards the end of the thing. Cara, some words of wisdom from you.
I don't know about words of wisdom. Okay. But I would everything that you've said, Amrit, about seeking help, really. And it does, I'd like to reiterate, it does take a tremendous amount of courage to speak about experiences that are particularly shameful and are just so overwhelming. But the best thing you can do is actually, we're human beings, we need other people. We can't live our lives in isolation, we're not supposed to.
Absolutely.
And so, just to seek help.
Yeah.
Guys, we're coming to the end of our show. Not only coming to the end of our show, we're coming to the end of the 10-part series. First of all, before I go ahead, I want to say a big thank you to Kiara and Amrit.
Thank you.
Talking about such a difficult subject can be quite difficult. But I want to say thank you for taking time out and sharing your words of wisdom, your knowledge, and your specialist subjects as well. 10-part series, 10 shows, 10 topics, 10 experts. It's come to an end, Mental Health Matters. I want to say a big thank you to all and everyone at Sagoo TV, including Bhaisupri Singh Ji, for actually making this possible. I want to say a big thank you to our sponsor Seek Sense and Dr. Rajot Kaur for being there for us and helping us out. I want to say a big thanks to all of our experts who've taken their time to come to talk with Sangat and talk about what needs to be talked about. And also I want to say a big thank you to the callers who've rang in and shared their experiences with us and told us what's going on in their lives and let the world know. ਅਸੀਂ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਸੰਗਤ ਟੀਵੀ ਦਾ ਸਾਡਾ ਜੋ 10 ਪਾਰਟ ਸੀਰੀਜ਼ 10ਵਾਂ ਸੀਰੀਜ਼ ਸੀਗਾ ਉਹਦਾ ਅੰਤ ਆ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਅੱਜ ਉਹਦਾ ਫਾਈਨਲ ਐਪੀਸੋਡ ਹੈਗਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਭਾਈ ਸੁਖਬੀਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਫਰੋਮ ਸੰਗਤ ਟੀਵੀ ਨੂੰ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਸਿਕ ਸੈਂਸ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਰਜੋਤ ਕੌਰ ਵੀ ਨੂੰ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਕਰਨਾ ਜੋ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਸਪਾਂਸਰ ਕਰਕੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਜੋ 10 ਪਾਰਟ ਸੀਰੀਜ਼ ਜੋ ਹੈਗਾ ਸਾਡਾ ਛੋਟਾ ਜੀ ਸੀਰੀਜ਼ ਹੈਗਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਮਦਦ ਕੀਤੀ ਜੋ ਵੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਐਕਸਪਰਟਸ ਹੈਗੇ ਜੋ ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲਿਸਟ ਹੈਗੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਅਤੀ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਹੈਗਾ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਕੋਈ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆ ਕੇ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਦੀ ਸ਼ਾਨ ਵਧਾਈ ਹੈਗੀ ਤੇ ਖਾਸ ਕਰ ਜੋ ਕਾਲਰਸ ਹੈਗੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਟਾਈਮ ਕੱਢ ਕੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਫੋਨ ਕਰਕੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਦੱਸ ਕੇ ਕੀ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਹੱਲ ਕਰਨਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਵੀ ਕਾਫੀ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਹੈਗਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੀਤਾ ਤੇ ਖਾਸ ਕਰ एक चीज़ हो गई जो सारे जो बंदे जो बैक ऑफिस काम करते हैं सारे कैमरामैन स्टाफ जो डायरेक्टर्स है उन्होंने भी खास कर धन्यवाद है शो जो है थोड़ी संगत वैसे है संगत की सेवा वास्ते संगत दसने से कुछ है तो की करिए उन्होंने बारे एक छोटी जी बेनती साढ़े वाल सी कि दसन सी मैंटल हैल्थ जो है ना काफ़ी बंदा समुंदर है जिन्ना देखिए उन्हें अंत नहीं है ਅਸੀਂ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਕਿ ਅੱਗੇ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਵੀ ਵਧੇ ਪਰ ਥੋੜੀ ਸੰਜੋਗ ਬਿਨਾ ਥੋੜੀ ਹਿੰਮਤ ਬਿਨਾ ਤੇ ਥੋੜੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਬਿਨਾ ਇਹ ਸ਼ੋ ਅੱਗੇ ਵਧ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਕਦਾ just want to say that Mental Health Matters it's a fun show. It's for me personally it's been quite an experience learning about mental health and talking about mental health to a number of experts. The show is predominantly down to Sangat, and it's because of Sangat this show goes on. If you want to go the show goes on, please let us know your thoughts and your feelings and topics you want to talk about, because without you guys the show can never go on. And I just want to say thank you to everyone, all the viewers at home who've been watching the show for the last 10 weeks, those who have participated online, those who have told me that how the show has impacted them. Just a big thank you to you. Hopefully I might see you again. Until then, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Mental Health Matters is sponsored by Seek Sense, with you a step closer towards a positive change.
ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਤੋਂ ਸਰਵਣ ਕਰੋ ਗੁਰਬਾਣੀ, ਕੀਰਤਨ ਤੇ ਕਥਾ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਹੀ ਟੀਵੀ ਸੈਟਅਪ ਤੇ।